Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Making It Work. If you don't know me by now, I'm Alicia Esposito of Retail TouchPoints, and I have again joining me today Dave Bruno and Richard Willis of Aptos. And today we're going to be talking about curbside pickup. Is it here to stay? We'll be getting into that and more. But first, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome. Good to be back.
Great to be back, Alicia. Thanks.
So I think the big underlying topic to drive this curbside topic is we saw it explode during the pandemic, largely out of necessity, right? It was the only way a lot of retailers could keep things moving and keep serving customers. So do you think this consumer demand will continue? Dave, how about you go first?
Yeah, Alicia, you know this is a widely debated topic. Everybody's got an opinion, as do I. But I also have a little data. It was a survey of the top 1,000 retailers offering curbside pickup, and from early 2020, only 7% of retailers were offering it, and by early 2021 of this year, 51% of the top 1,000 were offering curbside pickup. Now, as you said, that was certainly as much out of necessity as choice. But when you offer something, we all know, let's talk about free shipping, for example. Once you put it out there, it's very difficult to take it away from shoppers. So while we can debate and argue about the levels of adoption and where they will level off at, when and if things quiet down post pandemic, but it's hard to take things away. And if I do think there'll be enough demands in several categories to warrant continuing that. Maybe not every category, but I don't know, Richard, if you agree. Like I said, everybody seems to have a differing opinion on this.
Yeah, no, I agree, Dave. And here in the UK, we never really had curbside pickup outside of grocery, and we saw a number of the big brands really start to offer that service. But on recent surveys, including over here, actually, we know that around 40% of consumers here that were surveyed would say actually they would use that click and collect service. And for you guys, as it's returning to normal, another survey showed that 87% of people actually like that curbside service. But one of the things that we're seeing inside this data is that curbside has expanded, as I say, into more categories. It was largely connected with grocery. Now it's across fashion retail. It's across DIY, and even malls are getting in on providing this service now, where you can consolidate your shopping into a single collection point within a mall. So yeah, lots of interest in it.
I agree. It's been very interesting to see how it's extended into different categories, even shopping malls. I know in the US, there have been a few cases where, mall developers are trying to create that integrated experience for their, retail tenants and to create a better experience for their customers. So that'll be interesting in particular to see how that evolves. But I mean, with this expansion, I think there's this looming question of, what is needed for curbside pickup to be successful? What do retailers, or again, in some cases, even shopping malls, need to do to ensure that this experience is as seamless and fluid as possible? Because the ease, I think, is really the big benefit, right?
Definitely. I think what we did see was, to Dave's point, a lot of retailers really saw this as a way of saving their business and continuing to provide a service to customers. And they put solutions together very, very quickly. So the first and foremost thing that they need to do is just take a step back and evaluate their entire order lifecycle, the process of how they are going to service the customer, the technology that they've got in place, or indeed that they need to put in place to make that as simple as possible. And we'll no doubt talk about some good examples later on, as we always do. But as I say, for many, the critical factor was helping their customers, keeping their businesses alive. So now they've got a chance to rethink, look at every step of the journey, and particularly when the customer arrives at the store, how do they make that a seamless, efficient process that's repeatable and isn't really just a makeshift. So, I think look at the process, look at the technology you've got in place, and make it a connected part of your journey.
Yeah, I agree, Richard. And I think to me, in what I've seen when I've talked to some of our the CIOs and some of our clients, what they tell me has the highest impact on the customer experience is the communications. Getting it right at every step in that journey. And there are many steps. It's not that different than click and collect or BOPUS, but there are more specific steps, because if it's pick up just a typical click and collect, everybody knows, just go in the store and look for the sign, look for the desk, right? But when you're getting to the curb, when do I tell them? How do I make sure they know I'm waiting? How do I minimize my wait times? All of those things. I think we've probably all tried it in the last year and a half. And I know the places where I've tried it that communicate most effectively are the places that bring me back to their curb time and again. So, Alicia, you've done a lot of work on this and really documented every single step. And what I'm hearing and seeing from my own personal experience is the better you communicate, the better the experience.
I think that's a really good point, Dave, because I know that I've had cases where the pickup experience itself was very good, but the touch points or the engagements leading up to that pickup probably could have been a little bit better. In some of the cases, the item was no longer available, so they just decided not to say anything and not give it to us. So we had to do that digging ourselves. In other cases, we didn't know where to go once we got to the store. And it was a larger shopping center. It was a bit confusing. It was a crowded day. So I think, those details, although small, make a really big impact. Even like having a sign, like as soon as people enter the parking lot so they know where to go. I think, those aren't heavy lifts per se, but they do make a significant impact on the customer experience.
Yeah, I agree. And you raised a good point. I should have mentioned, that's the other thing that our clients have told me is think through the exceptions. Don't just think through when everything works well, but also how do I handle when an item's out of stock? How do I quickly alert the customer? If we promised it to them and they're getting in their car, what if that's the one item that motivated the entire trip, right? Sure, I threw in a couple of other impulse items or non-essential items, but the one thing I really needed is not there. You can really frustrate a customer. That's really no different than click and collect or BOPUS, but timing is everything. So figure out how to best get the exception information to the customer as quickly as possible.
Oh, that's great. So there seems to be a fundamental journey mapping process that every brand or retailer probably needs to go through, right? Like, what are all of the stages of the process? What are the points of engagement? And Dave, I'm glad you brought up the exception points. Like there are probably some branches to that customer journey, right? Like with every customer journey now, it's not linear. There are kind of, detours and different paths that consumers can go through. So journey mapping is huge, finding those points of engagement, finding those keys to success. But that seems to be just like the baseline, right? Like, I'm wondering, as we see curbside evolve, we see more brands and retailers implement it, if there is going to be not necessarily a tipping point, but a point where there needs to be differentiation, right? Like, I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for curbside to become a point of engagement or even a point of surprise and delight right? Like, am I crazy? Like, is there
Yeah, now you're
something
going way
there?
over the top, Alicia. That's just outrageous. Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, yeah, God, we throw around those terms. They are meaningful though to a customer when you can do that. And my opinion, and Richard, I know you'll have an opinion too, but I'll just sort of jump in. I think the answer is yes, but I would say yes with an asterisk because it depends on your categories, right? What kind of products that you sell. Some are much more easily, um, uh, much more adaptable to some kind of surprise and delight, more amenable to surprise and delight than others. What your client expectations are, sometimes one retailer's customers may be as fast, get me in and out as fast as possible. And alert here in the States, Domino's Pizza has now rolled out a massive marketing program for 2 minutes guaranteed from the time you pull up to the time you get your pizza, which I know that most of the people listening to this don't compete with Domino's, but that will help set expectations, right? So we have to be careful that we really get it right. And while we're at it, look for those opportunities within your specific customer's expectations. A couple ideas that we've seen, talked about, haven't seen a lot of it implemented, but a couple might be worth considering. Something as easy as, again, not doesn't work in every category, but free samples or giveaways of related products when you deliver their parcel. So or samples, right? So samples and free gifts with purchase, whether you promote them in advance or you just surprise them, right? When they get home and they open the bag, oh, wow, here's a nice, beautiful pair of socks that go with my workout gear or something, right? So they're small, they're not necessarily scalable, and they don't necessarily cross all categories. But there's a couple ideas anyway that we've seen that seem to have some merit to try to help replace those impulse sales that are lost when people don't come in the stores to collect their orders.
And I think, Dave, you're right. I mean, you touched on a lot of points there. And if you think about this as just being an extension to the store experience, okay, it's outside of the store, but actually there's no reason why retailers and store associates can't keep a similar experience and offer tips, services, advice on whatever the product is, as you say, depending on the category. In more speciality and general merchandise, there's more opportunity to provide instructions, help, assistance. um, but actually, in other areas, there's that opportunity of thinking about taking that clienteling type tactic out to the curbside. Really engage the customer, understanding, their needs and making them feel, the upsell or how they engage it. But I think, coming back also onto the point you talked about there on Domino's, setting that time expectation I know a number of brands here are talking about having product ready in 30 minutes to an hour. If it's 30 minutes, that's a car trip for somebody. So if it's not there, there'll be an issue. So a lot of them are communicating to make sure that you are only leaving when you've had that confirmation email. But I think, to the key point, the delight part is not only having somebody ready and keeping the process simple when somebody arrives, and that navigation to where do I go when I drive into the parking lot or the car park. Where do I go? What do I do? Keep that simple. We'll just make it very good, and then deliver it out to the car within minutes of arrival. And that's where the retailer needs to make sure this is resourced and staffed properly, because there's nothing worse than turning up and then sitting there and waiting for 10 minutes, because that's just going to lead to a very frustrating experience.
I think these are some really strong points. So, at a fundamental level, focus on your brand promise, what you're trying to accomplish with offering curbside. Is it speed, convenience? or is a core value prop for your brand that added level of service. Like I could imagine, hypothetically, you're texting with a stylist, you place the order, the stylist texts you and says, okay, like I saw like your order came through, like I'll come out and bring it out to you. That continuity of having like one person throughout every stage of that customer journey, I could imagine for certain brands would be super powerful. So it seems like there are opportunities, ways for this space to evolve, which is very exciting. But, we talked about a few examples a little earlier, and we'd like to dig into these on this series. So are there any brands or retailers that are getting close to this optimization? Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be the clienteling or the added level of service. Like, who is doing this either really well or close to very well that could be a possible model?
Yeah, I'll start. You guys know where I'm going. I can't stop talking about it, but they haven't really thought about surprise and delight, but I think that's not on brand for them, and it's Target. The Target, yeah, I can't say enough. It's flawless. I I was never a big Target shopper. I was always a Target shopper, but they have gotten a larger share of my wallet because of simply how well they've executed curbside since the pandemic. Now they had a little bit of a head start on people. They were already doing drive up, pickup, collect a car before the pandemic, but boy, did they nail it throughout the pandemic. And those of you who haven't shopped it, the minute you place an order, you get the confirmation text. You get the text when it's ready, and when it's ready, they ask you to share details if you're willing to share details about your car and track your location. I think I'm gonna. I was trying to think of exactly how many times. I apologize, you guys. I don't know the exact number, but I've probably done curbside with them 10 times in the last year, and at least half, if not more, the associate was waiting for me in the parking lot, let alone me waiting for them. They were standing there with the cart in the curbside area, and they waved at me when they saw the car that I said I was coming in to the parking lot. I mean, you talk about nailing it. And that, and that beats Domino's by a long shot. That beats Domino's by 1 minute and 59 seconds out of the 2 minutes. So I just feel like anybody who's considering that, at least if you have a Target in your area here in the States, try it. Learn from that, understand the things that they do well, and find those elements that are applicable to your experience and your customers, because it's just phenomenally well done. And I've done it at multiple Targets. I was obsessed with it. Like, okay, is it just my local store that's doing this well? Right? They have an awesome store manager. No, I've done 4 Targets, I think collectively about 10 times, and every single time I get the same experience. So I'll stop talking about them, but for real, it's really, really a very high bar for excellent execution.
Yeah, it's a great service. If they were there already and waiting for you, that's
Yeah, they're waving me in. They're like the guys at the airport bringing the planes into the gate.
If you're a busy parent, you have a car full of kids, for example, being able to just pull in and pull right out, that's a big part of their customer base. So I think it's a great example. Richard, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, like Dave, I experienced quite a few curbside pickups when we were during the pandemic, and there was some good service. But retailers here are more challenged on the real estate. It's hard to put a drive-through area into most of those car parks, and I experienced some of the DIY stores that were getting you lined up and getting your orders as you go. And there were through that pandemic, there were other big brands like John Lewis, Dunelm, Marks and Spencers, Curry's, PC World that introduced it. So they all started to make it really a formal part of their proposition. But actually, while some of those have reverted back to the traditional click and collect, so they've freed up that space that was originally being taken, there are some that are keeping it. And now they've interestingly called it contactless pickup. So they're making people feel very comfortable. So less so on around the use of the word curbside here, more into contactless. So Currys have continued to do that, and actually, interestingly, Pets at Home that I've experienced, and actually as an Aptos customer as well, are one of the brands that they're really executing it well. They've kept it going, and I understand around 10% of their orders are delivered in this way. And the process is simple. You go online, you select the items you want, you select to do a click and collect, but you actually confirm there that you want to do a contactless pickup. And basically, when you arrive, they've got designated parking areas. And M&S do this as well, by the way, outside of grocery for their fashion piece. So you go to a designated bay, you scan a QR code in that bay, or you press a link on the email that you've sent to you, and that alerts a member of staff. They come out, they deliver the goods straight to your car, and it's really good. It's efficient, and it's great for products that are bulky or need some assistance. So I think those retailers are really showing that there is value to their customers based on the volume, and because the likes of an M&S is taking it further beyond their trials, does show that a lot of customers are still seeing value in that proposition.
Well, these are some fantastic examples. Definitely shows how diverse curbside pickup could be, and all of the different communication touch points and even technology. Richard, I love that example of QR codes and quick links, making it as easy as possible for the customer to get what they need. So, gentlemen, thank you again so much for walking through the state of curbside pickup, where it is today, where it could possibly go in the future. I definitely think it's a big space to watch, especially as we see fulfillment be even more central to the customer experience. Thank you both again so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much.
And to all of you, of course, thank you for joining us for this episode of Making It Work. If you have any follow-up questions for us, feel free to drop us a line. We'd love to keep the conversation going. But if you're looking for some more insights, tips, best practices for optimizing that curbside experience, we do have a fantastic interactive checklist that digs into the nitty-gritty details of everything you need to know to bring your experience to the next level. So we encourage you to check that out. But in the meantime, stay well, keep learning, get inspired, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.